G'day guys, welcome back to the channel. Hope you are all doing well out there. Another big week, lots of news, very boring price action, however, and it's designed to make you question everything, make bad decisions when you just have to sit on your hands and do nothing and wait. It's a game of patience, Bitcoin. It is a test of your willpower and your mind space. It's a hard game. It's a very, very hard game. But we persist. We persist with this game. And we're still 2 years away. 2 years. It seems like a long, long way away. But we must remain vigilant in what we do. So let's check out the news for this week. Robert Kennedy Jr., not JFK, Robert Bobby Kennedy Jr., he's continuing to go down the path of discussing Bitcoin. And, it's a very interesting one at that. I've actually got the full excerpt at the end of today's video if you want to watch his entire discussion or presentation from this conference that he was recently at, which was called Heal the Divide. He obviously spoke at the Bitcoin conference as well, and he's a believer in Bitcoin. He likes what it represents. He likes that it's freedom technology. He likes that it cannot be censored. He likes that it is effectively the Second Amendment. He also likes that it's, you can use energy that is being wasted, and it is a greening technology in essence. Look, we don't agree with everything Robert has to say, but it's not really about that. He's, I would say, at this stage, like number 3 in the running to be president. He is openly talking and discussing Bitcoin. So what that means, whether he wins or not, is irrelevant in my opinion. What is going to happen is he's bringing forward the conversation about Bitcoin. Now we know Vivek Ramaswamy, who's also running on the Republican side. He talks about Bitcoin as well. He doesn't have a chance either, quite frankly, but it's becoming a discussion point. Now, for years we've been now saying that this is a big deal. Bitcoin's very important. It's going to be a big part of the conversation. Now, let me just reiterate really quickly where we're at with things. It's being discussed in presidential campaigns in the US. Countries have adopted it as the currency. It is being put on the sovereign nation's balance sheets. NASDAQ listed companies are putting it on their balance sheet. It's the best performing asset, which I say every week. It's got regulatory clarity. There's just so many factors that it's hard to understand the FUD that comes through. Clearly, it's paid by bad actors, and it's designed to get you to not buy Bitcoin. And I think this latest round, or what we're going to find this cycle is, we're going to look directly in the eye of CBDCs. We're going to also look directly in the eye of BlackRock and the ETFs wanting to buy Bitcoin on your behalf, which we don't want. That's, it's great for the price, but it's not good for you long term because you have the ability with Bitcoin to be completely sovereign. So perhaps if Robert Kennedy Jr. wins, then you will have no income tax on your Bitcoin. Now let's just quickly go back here about what he says. So speaking at the Heal the Divide PAC event, Democratic presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. outlined specific Bitcoin-focused policies that he would enact as president, including gradually backing the US dollar with Bitcoin and making Bitcoin profits exempt from capital gains tax. I remember maybe last cycle, or maybe at the last bear market, there was a lot of discussion between the Bitcoiners through the Bitcoiners regarding, just outlast the government. Outlast the government. It'll eventually be a currency, or there won't be any tax on it. Just outlast them. And it's an interesting point because, let's say we get to a sort of eye-watering number this cycle and it's still got caps gains on it. The day that it doesn't have caps gains on it, it's going to be another giant push up higher. And I don't know. Like, it's all signs are pointing to up for me. In other news this week, we've had Tesla. They've obviously still holding, I think it's like 10,000 or how many Bitcoin. It's a lot of Bitcoin. They're still holding Bitcoin on the balance sheet. And you can see in the back end of the Tesla code now, Bitcoin is back in the code base to act as a receiver of payment. So it is back in the code base. It can, or it hasn't quite yet, but it's obviously not far away from becoming coming back on as a payments method for Elon, which is cool. Now Elon, look, he's a hard nut to read. He's just changed the name of Twitter to X. He's obviously a Doge guy, and I assume Doge, he's going to bring that into the payment schedule or the Twitter base at some stage. It's going to cause a crazy pump, but it's just hard to such a lucky dip on to determine when that might be. But look, this is good science. He's a giant. He's nearly one of the biggest companies now, and it's good to have this company at least interacting with Bitcoin. I'm going to quickly play this video. This is a really funny one. We've obviously had in the last week the Ripple decision, last couple of weeks, Ripple decision it's apparently not a security. It might be contested. There's still a lot of gray area, but either way, the Ripple guys have made a lot of money over the years dumping on retail. Now they're funding Greenpeace. It's proven now. We know who has been backing Greenpeace. Greenpeace have been paid $5 million to run a range of campaigns against Bitcoin because, Ripple want their number to go up and not Bitcoin's. So it's a really funny space in that regard. But look at this advertising. It is pretty heinous. And I reckon that Greenpeace has lost basically all its credibility now. It's sort of very lackluster, and I don't think anyone can really possibly take them seriously. It's, you don't have to look too far into this now to sort of realize the benefits. And Greenpeace, from their perspective, there's a whole lot of greening technology available. It's the greenest industry we have now, Bitcoin. I mean, I know that that's hard to hear. It is the greenest industry we have that's available to work in or to be a part of or whatever. So they should really be promoting it, not making it sound bad. So along with the little down or sort of plateau we've had in the Bitcoin price, there's a lot of FUD about this government seized Bitcoin and how they're going to sell it. We know they're going to sell it in 2023. They're going to sell the remainder here in 2023. They've still got, say, 190,000 Bitcoin to dump on the market. So we're going to get some dumps this year, no doubt. And we're still looking, I believe, we're still looking at either a dip now and some push up, or some push up then a dip later. There's still going to be plenty of volatility up until the halving. There's no doubt. So you just got to be prepared for that. But last week, the US government dumped a 8,200 Bitcoin, so that obviously doesn't help the price. They dump it directly into the market. And I hope that old mate Larry is buying these straight up, or Michael Saylor probably is. But either way, we can keep an eye on this now. Someone's made this tracker of one of their wallets. Oh, I love it. It is fantastic. Now, Willy Woo is one of the OG analysts in the space, and he continues to do great work. Whenever he puts out some information or some posts, you sort of got to read what he says and listen. He's generally pretty directionally right. Obviously the time frame has a little bit of skew, but overall he's pretty right. Now, this is a bit of a hard one to see, but the density shows the amount of coins purchased at each price, and the darker the area, or the darker the line, the more you can see the purchasing that's occurred. So you can see at the bottom of our current phase, there was a whole lot of purchases. And we're in a really dark patch now. Just in this whole spectrum, in sort of between 25 and 30, there is a lot of buying. It's just a constant mass. This is the biggest point of Bitcoin's sort of life. It's the mid-cycle low of last time. We had a big stop off in the last 2021 run up. We had a mid-cycle, like the little dip between the double top of the last cycle. We spent a lot of time there before FTX and Celsius and all these other cryptos collapsed. It's just one of those important numbers, and it's not clearly acting as resistance for the price now. We can't seem to get through. We're probably going to need some big news to push through. But what Willie is saying is that, there's a lot of accumulation going on here, and perhaps the whales are buying again, which means that price may go up sooner than we think. If we look a little bit deeper here, this is the FS chart, and the futures demand is currently moving the market only. That's all that it is. This demand has been climbing against sideways price action, which is actually bullish. And the volatility dynamic also signaling a larger move is probable. So Willie again here shows that you can see that we may be turning now and heading back up. So, I think too many people are discussing this price point of 48K, 36K. There's just too many people. Everyone's expecting that now. So I just can't see it happening, to be honest with you. Whether we go through or whether we stop way short, I just don't know. And maybe we see those sort of numbers after the halving. But either way, it's shaping up. It's shaping up. And so we got to keep an eye on these fundamentals, these on-chain analytics, which we actually have available to us. So yeah, they need to be taken into account. Now, this is a really interesting chart that I came across. So you can see here we've got the NASDAQ, and it's the NASDAQ futures. So the orange line is the NASDAQ futures, and the Bitcoin price is obviously, you can see in the red and green bars that you see. So usually these act in some sort of fairly similar manner. They have some sort of good correlation, and you can see these these green arrows. They're pointing to the gap. So right here there was a gap. This was in 2020. We saw a gap in where the futures were at, the NASDAQ. They were way ahead of the Bitcoin price, but the Bitcoin price caught up. And it sort of stayed on line, a bit more volatile, stayed on path with that. And as the NASDAQ futures came down, Bitcoin literally followed it step for step, as you can see here. Now we're at a point again where we've got a huge gap. So, there's reason to think that what happened over here may happen again. And over the course of the next few months, we may rip higher to try to catch up to this line again. So, I don't know. I still believe we need this catalyst. I think August, if some of the ETFs get it, or all of the ETFs get approved in August, we'll rip up here, no problems. But, we've just got to be aware of the risks of this time, this phase pre-halving. It is volatile and it can go either way. So just a little reminder, as we progress towards the halving, here's obviously a charts BTC chart. It's always very easy to digest and I really enjoy them. We're right on track, basically. The progress is bang on. We're ticking along very nicely. And, you know, based on what's happened in the past, you sort of suspect that we're going to go sort of semi-sideways from here as we pass the halving. And then after the halving, as you can see, there's a little bit of up action. And whether that remains the same is yet to be known, but we can only assume that, you know, the hype and the price hype and the ETF hype and the presidency hypes and all the hype that goes with Bitcoin will continue to help push the price up. So, look, again, only time will tell, but we're moving along in the right direction. Here's another way of looking at the same sort of chart. So we've got 280 days approximately to go, and you can see here obviously the prices, and we've also got the realized prices in the dotted lines. We're literally right in between the last two cycles. We are plodding along in a really nice fashion. And this halving's going to come around much sooner than we think. And you can see all the volatility that happened in the last couple of cycles through here. They had some rip ups, some 50%, some 30% drawdowns. And it's just a chaotic time. But when you zoom out like this, you sort of see that it is similar. Very, very similar to the last cycle. So we've just got to, be very patient and try to control our emotions through this phase. It is very tricky, but we've got to try. My last chart for today is the CBBI. You can see where we're at. We're at 29. We've just sort of plateauing now. It's look, 30,000. It's just been a very interesting number. Look, I will be surprised if we don't see 100 on the CBBI confidence level before the halving. That's a huge call, but we're at 40 or 29 now. And so, you know, I expect one little pump at some stage, whether it's just before the halving itself or whether it's way before, but we'll see if we can get there or not. That's all for today, guys. Really short one, quick little update. There's just not much to talk about in the charts. Everything's looking good. Mining's looking good. Hash is good. Everything's good. Lots of chatter about it. And everyone's just sort of sitting by the wayside waiting for the ETF discussion. So we've got FOMC coming up this week. That's going to give us the CPI, whether they're going to raise rates or whether they're going to hold rates. That's probably not going to impact that much, but it's still a factor. And then on top of that, we've got the ETF coming up. I think it's the start of August or sort of like the 10th of August, but it is certainly close. So I feel like people are sitting, waiting to jump on the boat. Are we going to get a little dip down to 28.5 or 28? Maybe. But if we can hold 28, I would say that's a pretty good spot to be buying. That's just my 2 cents. But here is the full interview. Now, this is quite a long one. Here's his full presentation. It's worth listening to just to hear how he's discussing some of these topics of backing the balance sheet of the US with Bitcoin and some other hard assets, and also how he's removing cap gains tax. So yeah, interesting, very interesting discussion. And clearly this is going to come up more and more with candidates now. And I'll be interested to see what sort of countries' leaders adopt sort of similar discussion points. But that's all for now. Have a great week. I will see you next week. Stay tough. Hang in there. All the best. Bye for now.
Thank you so much for having me, and welcome to all the people who have joined this from the Bitcoin community who have joined this this Zoom call. I want to, at Bitcoin 2023, I mentioned a number of commitments that I was making to the Bitcoin community. My uncle, President Kennedy, when he was in office, understood the the importance of hard currency and the dangers of having pure fiat currency with no other option. He created silver certificates. He created gold certificates. They were after his death. Those were discontinued. But he understood the relationship between fiat currency and war, fiat currency and environmental, large-scale, very, very destructive environmental projects, and also these giant aggregations of wealth and the unbalance, the disparities in wealth that are ultimately the ultimate yield of every fiat currency, and then also the threat to America from the inflation and ultimately the destruction of the dollar as the global currency. And Bitcoin is part of the basket of hard currencies that I think that the Kennedy administration is going to encourage the proliferation of and the propagation of. And I mentioned many reforms that I'm committed to in my Bitcoin 2023 speech, including self-custody, your wallet should be your own, the capacity of people to run, of American citizens, others to run Bitcoin, or to run nodes inside their own homes, the policy of industry neutral regulation of energy, and my administration's mission of making America the global hub of cryptocurrency, particularly Bitcoin, as a means of incentivizing greater investment in green and energy and renewable energy production, and attracting engineering, investment, and innovation to our country. I will clarify some kind of sensible, and I need to think more about this and meet with many of you, but some kind of sensible jurisdiction and governance that recognize that Bitcoin is not a security and should not be regulated as one. And then also to put an end to the current policies of the Biden administration that are embodied by Choke Point 2.0 to punish banks for dealing in Bitcoin, and also to make strong barriers against the issuance of central bank digital currencies. I want to talk today about two additional reforms that we've given a lot of thought to and are going to be part of our package. Like Singapore, Germany, Switzerland, Puerto Rico, and Portugal, the Kennedy administration will exempt the conversion of Bitcoin to the US dollar from capital gains taxes. And there are downsides to this policy that we have considered carefully, including, and I want to be explicit about this, that this kind of policy will do something that is inconsistent with many of the other policy objectives of my administration, which will give a windfall to some of the investors, or the early investors in Bitcoin, many of whom have a great deal of money and don't need a windfall. But the benefits of this policy, I think, are so great to our country that they dwarf the disadvantages of that outcome. The benefits include facilitating innovation and spurring investment, ensuring citizen privacy, incentivizing ventures to grow their business and tech jobs in the United States rather than in Singapore, Switzerland, Germany, and Portugal. And today, and to make non-taxable, one of the provisos is that, or one of the factors in this decision is that non-taxable events are unreportable. And that means it will be more difficult for governments to weaponize currency against free speech, which, as many of you know, is one of my principal objectives, and other civil liberties. as occurred in Canada during the under the Trudeau government during the COVID administration. One of the historical factors that we looked at was what happened when the Clinton administration took the very controversial policy of exempting e-commerce from taxes. And, people said, well, that's going to benefit certain wealthy people and certain classes of individuals. But what really happened is it attracted engineers to the United States. Companies like eBay, like PayPal, like Amazon, which remained in the United States and headquartered in our country. And we attracted engineering talent from all over the world to grow that industry. And Silicon Valley is largely a result of that policy. So that policy stayed in place for 10 years. And as I said, it was very controversial in the beginning, but the outcome of that policy was really important. And this is almost exempting Bitcoin from exchange taxes is almost a perfect analogy for that, and we ought to be doing that in the United States. Secondly, the Kennedy administration will begin to back the U.S. dollar with real finite assets such as gold, silver, platinum, and Bitcoin, which is the world's hardest liquid asset, to strengthen the U.S. dollar and guarantee its continued success as the world reserve currency. This will include U.S. Treasury bills, notes, and bonds. My plan would be to start very, very small. Perhaps 1% of issued T-bills would be backed by hard currency, by gold, silver, platinum, or Bitcoin. And then, depending on the outcome, we would increase that annually. And what this will do is it will ironically, we will be able to use Bitcoin to help save the U.S. dollar. I was in Cleveland 10 days ago in the Lee Harbor district of Cleveland, which is one of the poorest districts in Cleveland. I got absolutely the business in that district. It's almost all African-American. We're almost completely wiped out by the COVID epidemic. There are a few remaining businesses, and they are now being wiped out, not by inflation. Of course, everybody, the poor, are being decimated by inflation in this country and people on fixed incomes. And Bitcoin would be a hedge against that. But they're being wiped out now by high interest rates, which is the remedy, the government's remedy, the Fed's remedy for inflation. The high interest rates have devalued the value of T-bills, which are, and so many of the local and community banks that serve those communities are now hoarding their liquid assets. They're hoarding their T-bills and they're not making loans. And I met with an African-American woman who had one of the few surviving businesses in that community. It's a sausage business that had been in her family for 80 years. And she's closing it now because she cannot get a small loan, even a small loan, from a local bank. They're simply unavailable because the banks are not putting any liquidity into those communities. And we need to change that. And one of the ways to change that is to strengthen the perception and the value of T-bills so that they do not degrade like that. And this is a way of doing that. So those are the two announcements I'm going to make for today.